All right, let's go ahead and begin. Hi, everybody. I'm Paul. I'm with JetBrains. I'm with WebStorm. Joining me today, fresh out of the oven, joined us technically yesterday or day before yesterday?
Technically next month, but...
Well, yeah, technically. Anyway, yeah. Jan-Niklas Berkman, known in our community and other communities. My colleague, Khalid Abu-Hakman back here, from the Rider team, but really wants to be on the WebStorm team because web is much cooler than .NET and C#. Do you want to say a couple of words about your background in Angular and RxJS?
Yeah, I think this will just work for a minute. So, Jan-Niklas Berkman, nice to meet everyone. I'm technically an Angular GDE, so I know a thing about Angular. I'm RxJS core team member, so also about this old technology like that. Not fancy, maybe. Hey. No.
Hello. Hello. Yep, it's good.
Maybe. Yeah, so this thing that gets replaced by signals, I know a thing about that too. And it's not entirely getting replaced. I'm also slightly coffee addict, so if you don't want to talk about Angular, I'm happy to talk about coffee. A lot.
Coffee snob?
Yeah. Okay. I work my own coffee machine here.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a bit much.
Nah, it's appropriate. Yeah, if you have any questions or feedback for WebStorm, very happy to take that and then redirect that in a month to him.
All right, cool.
And him. And the other guy over there.
Oh, and at the booth, we have the team lead for WebStorm. So if there's something that you really wish was there and isn't, or if there's something that is really broken, bring your laptop to him, not me, because he can fix it. Okay, we'll go ahead and begin. If you need a WebStorm and you'd like to follow along, that QR code is up. I believe most of you are set, so we will go ahead and begin. This is the Power Angular with WebStorm Workshop. The goal is to go through the Tour of Heroes tutorial and go through it from a WebStorm perspective. How can I do that stuff badass? And so I've got printouts that Padawan will turn into excellent videos when he joins us. As we go through and we do tips, raise your hand if you do WebStorm, IntelliJ, any of our stuff. Are you a user of WebStorm, whatever? Raise your hand if you think you're probably better than me at it. Maybe some of you know some things that I don't. Khalid obviously does. Some of you, Matthew, for example, probably is going to have some tips. Shout them out. Let's see if you can stump the chump and see if I can recreate it, or if I have this look on my face like, wow, I have no idea what you're talking about and should. We're going to go through the Tour of Heroes tutorial. The first step as we go along is not that big of a deal. It just explains what you're going to do. So we will jump into create a project. I'm going to start in WebStorm. I'm going to paste this as if you're following along. If you're not following along, that's cool. Just watch me. If none of you follow along, this is going to be over really fast because I've timed it as if you're going to do some of the typing. So launch WebStorm, go to the new project screen, or if you're just starting WebStorm, the Welcome to WebStorm screen. And one of the first things we're going to do is show creating a new project, but let the IDE do it for us. So in this segment, we're going to assume you already have the correct Node.js installed. You've got a WebStorm all in the factory settings. We're going to create a new workspace. We're not going to do it by typing something from the command line. We are instead going to go and say new project. Oh, let me stop for a second. Hey, Chow. Also, a very, very welcome celebrity from the Angular community, Chow Tran, with the Narwhal folks, and did the webinar that I stole all of this stuff from, a webinar on power tips with Angular and WebStorm. Go see Chow at the booth to hear this. What are you working on with Narwhal these days?
I'm working on the NX Cloud dashboard.
All right. How's it going?
Yeah, pretty good.
All right. All right. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah.
Is this font size okay? Small. When we get into the editor, I'll zoom it and make it bigger. Okay, so we will start a Angular CLI project, and I'm going to call this Angular Tour of Heroes. And the IDE is already helping a little bit by setting some choices for you. For example, Volta support. We do have support for detecting a Volta installation if you use Volta to manage your node installations, which I do because the alternative is terrible. Volta is really nice. Other things in here, the NPX, as I learned the hard way on the flight here, I had a globally installed Angular CLI at version 14. So I had to go through my tutorial on the flight and make sure it wasn't broken for 16. And you can pass in extra parameters. I will go ahead and say create if you're following along. And away we go. Hopefully the Wi-Fi speed is good enough on this. I'll go ahead and make things a little bit bigger. IDE font size. Okay. Zoom this window a little bit. So if you're following along, raise your hand if you have finished this step. Are you following along, Matthew? Good. Good. Anybody need a little more time? Raise your hand if you need a little more time. A little more time? Okay. So I'll talk through it a little bit. This is running the CLI command in the background in one of these tool windows and opening a new project that's already had all the NPM installed for it. It's also generating a couple of run configurations. These are a WebStorm thing for configuring, shockingly, how to run things, but also how to debug things, profile things, etc. You would have had to create these manually otherwise. I'm using WebStorm 2023.1.2. In a later step, I will switch to the new UI. For the most part, I'm on factory settings. I do have one thing that I will turn on in just a second. Actually, I'll do it now. I have a plugin. We have plugins in the IntelliJ community, and I've got one called Presentation Assistant that every time I do a keystroke, it pops a little window up and tells you what I did, so you can see that keystroke, and I will turn that on. View, appearance. I have descriptions of actions. So for example, if I navigate by symbol, down at the bottom here, you'll see the keystroke sequence that I did. Okay, we caught up over here?
I think I have a proxy issue.
Oh. It's always something. It's a miracle the internet works at all. Okay, I'll go ahead and close this and continue. So we've got our environment set up. We created a new application. And what I'd like to do is show you a little bit about working your way around. So the first tip I'm going to do is the one ring to rule them all. It's called Search Everywhere. If you press Shift twice, or press Shift twice, you can do a search of all kinds of things in your project. You can see these tabs up here. You can search. There are keystroke sequences that will narrow the search to certain things. But Search Everywhere will look in all kinds of useful places, such as file names. So if I type package.json, I can jump to that file without having the project tool window open. I'm a bit of a minimalist, a little bit of a redneck, so I speak weird. And I keep the project tool window closed and I navigate through other means. But instead of having to use my mouse to come over to package.json and double click on it, I did search everywhere and started typing just a fraction of it. I could have said pa.j, narrowed it a little bit, and done less typing. So I'm now in package.json. Some of the things that are pretty cool are these gutter icons for the NPM scripts. If I want to run the CLI dev server, I can walk up to this script. Too small? Yeah, I do it differently. All right, so I will set to 150. And then I will put this back down to be based on something smaller. Is that better? Cool. All right. I can walk up to one of these scripts, click on the icon, and run it in different and interesting ways. This is already going to reveal a bias I have. I believe in the debugger, and I like always be debugging. Whenever I have a chance to run it, I just run it on the debugger. In the off chance that I might want to start debugging, I don't have to go stop it and then restart it on the debugger. But we'll run under the, not the debugger, we'll just run it regularly. First time this fires up, it's Angular. It's going to be a little bit slower until it gets what it needs. And then I can click on this link and open it in my preferred setup browser. What's my preferred setup browser? Go to settings, and you can see the hierarchy here and the choices of how I would want them used. It's going to fire up Firefox for me and show me the Tour of Heroes page. This is all normal stuff for you, but you can click on this in other ways. Control click? Command click? Yeah. You can click on it in different ways and fire up a JavaScript debug server. We'll try and get to that one a little bit later. So that's running things. I'll go ahead and close this because I'm going to run it in a different way later. But if I wanted to run it under debugger, I would just click that. And now I'm running my site under the Node.js debugger, which is pretty cool. If I want to run the build, I can walk up to it, run the build. You see that the .angular folder has this color on it. And when the build finishes, another has a color on it. We don't want those indexed. We don't want them to show up in our searches and get rebuilt whenever we rebuild our site, that it turns up the IDE. So these are marked directory as excluded. And you can walk up to certain directories, for example, and exclude them. I'm not making any statement. I'm just saying you can exclude directories. I'll close this tool window. And then maybe I want to run the tests. So I walk up and run the tests. I'm showing this because a big part of what I'm going to show in the rest of this is test-first development in a better way.
So the excluding, that doesn't also go by your get-ignore file that's in there as well? Or?
It's funny you should mention that. So the question is, the excluding doesn't go by the .getignore file. I was at PyCon a month and a half ago, and a Python core contributor asked me, why don't you just use .getignore? And I pointed them at a ticket we have which has a well-reasoned explanation about why that might or might not be a good thing. I've forgotten the explanation.
Oh, okay.
But when I heard it, it was a good explanation.
That explains it.
In the running of this, raise your hand if you do karma. That is surprising. Raise your hand if you do testing of any kind. Okay, then, do you use Cypress? What do you use?
Cypress and Jest.
Jest. Everyone has switched to Jest?
He's faster.
Oh, yes. Why don't you switch to VTest? Come on.
No, but the other thing with Jest, it has a few more utilities than what Karma has.
Sure.
And the way that they built our original app, basically, Jest allows you to test Node and Angular
Indeed.
at the same time. Yeah. I don't recommend that configuration, but you can kill two birds with one stone.
Any other comments on Jest?
I got a comment on current Karma will blow up on a build server trying to talk to the headless browser without error message other than that things timed out, which means you don't know which test is failing on the server but passing on workstations. And that's essentially why we switched to Jest. And there's a million-mile-long thread on GitHub of people dealing with the same useless error message. So it's really the Karma test runner that is problematic.
Sure.
Running it in a browser.
They don't support it with regards to documentation as well as Jest.
Yeah. They certainly recognize that Karma got orphaned. So this point was from Matthew, the build server guy, was talking about how Karma has issues in build farms and stuff like that. We're going to be showing Karma. I wish now that I didn't, because I'm a Jest person switching to VTest, and so I can't even spell Karma. But the good news is everything I'll show you about our test, our cool, badass test IDE stuff applies for all the testing tools. Okay, so I will close this. Go ahead, disconnect you, close you. That's a way to run things by navigating to package.json, clicking on the gutter icons, and seeing what you have. For example, I'll do that again. I'll say karma.conf.js, go, and by default, I can do another thing as well. This is set to auto watch. That's why it continued running, but single run false. We're going to change this in a second. I'll go ahead and steal a peek from the future. We have a problems tool. These are called tools. So the to-do tool, the problems tool. And it's telling me about some typos, but it's letting me know. I'll close that. That's because I was in that file. It's letting me know that, hey, I can help you, Paul, by going to here. So if I double click on it, I'll go to that line, I'll hover over it, and this is saying, hey, we can download coding assistance for Node.js. Do you want it? Alt-Enter is the path into all of our marvelous universe of coding assistance. So I say yes, it goes out and gets @types Node, and now I have autocomplete and stuff for Node stuff, instead of just basic browser JavaScript stuff. All right, I've got the two run configs that I mentioned before up here. So instead, I'm going to run using the run configuration for Angular instead of the npm package.json gutter icon. When I run this way, it brings up the browser window. Let's see. Oh, no. That was the JavaScript debug. I need the Angular CLI build server. It's going to run this, and I get some settings that I can have on this. I will go and edit that run configuration, and this is the run, the parameters to run configuration. Yes?
Sorry, going back a bit for the error window that you showed. How do you trigger that? Because
Sure.
I was struggling with that, and I go to the file, right click, and running that, so it's kind of.
Yeah.
So how can you trigger that per file?
The question is how to open the problems tool window and then how to look at files versus project and stuff. Good question. I did it with the mouse. So when I click on it, you'll see, hover on it, you'll see that there's a speed key. So I could do Alt-6.
Okay, and if that does not appear to me there, I mean, if I don't have the problem stuff there.
Do you have none of these down here?
Yeah, sometimes appear.
Yeah. I'll get to that in a little bit. I turn all that stuff off.
Okay.
It is via appearance toolbar window, tool window bars. So if I toggle that, those disappear. And if you go to View, Appearance, Toolbar Windows, Tool Window Bars, it reappears. It might also appear in something I'm going to show in a bit, which is Find Action. To do a spoiler, in a few minutes, I'm going to turn all this crap off and have a really lean IDE experience, which might match what you have. On to your next question, though. I'm going to do Alt-6 to bring up the project tool window. This is the problems in the current file, and you can adjust all these things to be warnings versus errors versus I don't care about them, such as typos. I like project errors, particularly for TypeScript, because it will tell me when I've done something that broke something I'm not looking at. Project errors is a really useful view, and one of the things I'll show in a bit is we surface some Angularisms, like template stuff, into problems view, not just TypeScript stuff. Okay. All right, I will pause there for a moment before we go to the next segment, which is serve the application. Does anybody have any tips? Do you have any tips about getting into package.json, running things, run configurations? Any of you have any ways of doing things that you'd like to talk about at the moment? To break the ice, I try to avoid using the keyboard as much as I can. So when I run things, I don't go click here. I do Control-Alt-R and pull up this window. And I have like lots of run configs, especially in testing when I'm running individual tests. And then I can just speed type and say BU and hit enter, and it will run that way. Yes?
So I'm using the run tab, the tool. So I set a configuration, the CLI that you see on top. Run my configurations there, and then I just, is it run? I think I have a sidebar with all the commands, right? And I just click play on it.
Is it this one? The NPM scripts? Is that the sidebar that you have?
I think it's actually in the run tab.
Colin, do you have any idea what he's talking about?
So if you hit on the top where it says Angular exactly, you click on it, and there I have edit configurations. And if I add a new configuration, let's say ng-serve -- environment stage, for instance, I could write save that, and then it appears. I think it appears in run, but I will double check it.
Okay. But you're saying it doesn't appear just here. You're saying it appears.
There, but I always have this tools open.
Okay,
that's the
all right.
best way for me to
That would be cool to see that. All right. Anybody else have any points? We will continue on to serve the application. I just showed, and we're currently running it. This is the preferred way to run things in all of our IDE tools. These configurations configure how you run things. They can be used for debugging things, for profiling things, concurrency testing, all these other kinds of tools. Yes?
Well, I'm using Wallaby.
Oh, Wallaby!
It's awesome.
I paid for it like 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's well. That's it. But for me, it's pretty helpful there.
Yeah, right.
And, but I am using also the new UI version of WebStorm.
Sure.
And the thing that I like it is to have in there in the left the services ready. The only thing that bothered me a bit is I need to have separate services per each.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's cool because just I can change between projects because I'm working with a large monorepo. So just I have everything defined in there, and just I am clicking there again, execute it, and run again. So using that services window there attached there in the left with the UI is quite useful.
So for the video, he was talking about Wallaby, which is a commercial add-on that works in IntelliJ IDEs and VS Code. I think they've got a hosted thing. It's really innovative. It was innovative 10 years ago when I bought it to speed up my Angular JS builds. But its debugger is really interesting. And he also pointed out about new UI, which we will be switching to in a moment.
Sorry.
And the services tab, which I will not be covering, but I would like in the break to have you show me what you're doing. That's cool.
That's actually, it's not the run tab, it's the services tab.
Services tab. Okay, well, maybe we will have to show it coming out of break then. Okay. So I showed these run configurations, and you can go up to them and pull them right if you click on the correct thing. And you can see other things that you can do with them. So for example, on the tests, I can run them under the debugger. I can run them with coverage. I can delete this run configuration, or I can edit it and put a bunch of weird parameters. As you can see, these run configurations are typed. So these all come from manually creating a run configuration. For example, Cucumber or Docker or Gulp or whatever. And each one of these are types of run configurations. And each type might have different arguments on it. For example, the test one is going to have options about how do you want to run your tests. Do you want to run a file, suite, everything, whatever. Lots of other parameters that can go with running these tests. What I'm going to do is a little bit different. I'm going to go back to package.json. And this is using Command E, recent files, which is one that is hardwired into my brain. I don't have to think about it. And I can start typing things to complete. It can go over to tools as well as files. But in this case, I want to go back to package.json and go back to package.json. And I want to install Prettier and switch on Prettier support. For years and years and years, WebStorm and IntelliJ was all stuck up like, we already do formatting, suck it. And the rest of the world was like, yeah, but we use Prettier, suck it. And we're like, okay, then we'll just support Prettier. So if I install into my dev dependencies Prettier, I will get Prettier support. But the way that we do the install, instead of going to the command line and doing, I don't even remember what I'm typing. Is it yarn? Is it npm? Is it pmp? Whatever. I can go to package.json and get autocomplete support. Choose the correct version. It now tells me, hey, you've got packages that need installing. Alt-enter is my friend. Run npm install. And now I have Prettier installed in my project. I now need to tell WebStorm to use it. If I would have done this before launching WebStorm, it would have detected it. But I'm going to go to Prettier in settings, and I'm going to spell it correctly. And you see that we have a preferences panel just for working with Prettier. It's pretty cool. Automatic Prettier configuration, so it will detect things. We'll come back here in a second and get Prettier to support some other things. Yes?
How did you do the install?
Let me do it from the beginning. So I'm in package.json. Are you in package.json? Okay, so I'm going to delete this line. I'm going to add a new line, and I'm going to type the quotes, and I get autocomplete on crap out there in npm. So I start speed typing, and I get Prettier. When I hit enter, it's going to autocomplete and then go to the next field. And it's going to detect what versions are available. And I just hit enter. Then it was yellow because it's not installed. And it was warning me. If I would have gone to the problems tool window, I probably would have seen it. Alt-enter gives me options at that point to install packages.
I'm using IntelliJ, and one of the things I run into a lot is it'll give me a hint saying, hey, do you want to use Prettier? I'll say yes, and the hint still sort of stays in my code.
Sure.
So how do I get that to go away?
The point was in IntelliJ, it will offer, do you want to use Prettier, but clicking the thing that should make it go away doesn't make it go away.
Yeah.
And what I believe is actually happening there is it's saying the thing you don't want. It's saying, do you want to use Prettier styles with our formatting? Like import your settings for Prettier, and where they match our formatting, use that. You just want to use Prettier.
Right.
So bring that to the booth, and Andre will take a look at it.
Okay.
Because that happens to me sometimes too, like in PyCharm. And I'm like, I clicked that already. Why are you still asking me that? It must have detected that something changed. Did this answer the question about?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I'm going to go back to the Prettier setup, and I'm going to say automatic configuration. So it will detect my Prettier installation in node modules or globally. And it's going to do prettier for these kinds of files, but this is the one I want. I don't want to manually run prettier. I want it to run prettier whenever the IDE thinks I've saved something. We'll get to that in a moment. There's a link to all actions on save. You can integrate other kinds of things to happen whenever you change stuff. Like optimize imports is a fun one. I don't run it on save because I trick myself into thinking I'm a badass productive person because I do Control-Alt-O 100 times. When I'm confused about what TypeScript wants and I can't decide what to do next, I'll just optimize my code like 10 times, waiting for, the moment to arrive. All right, prettier package not specified. That's because I haven't done apply yet.
I have a question.
Sure.
Sorry. Can
Yeah.
you go back to the screen where you pick the actions on save?
Yep.
Is there, for example, you are picking the run prettier, but at the beginning you have the reformat code.
Right.
That overlaps.
It's an interesting point because this is our reformat code, and you probably don't want to do both.
That's my issue.
This is the first time I've ever been helpful at a conference. Oh my God, it's on video. All right. For the record, I brilliantly solved a customer's problems about reformat code. Yay, me. That's right. This free workshop has paid for itself with you already. Okay, continuing on, we'll go ahead and cause the problem now. Formatting of JSON files. So I'm going to save no prettier. Prettier didn't run on this. Maybe it was not the saving. I'm going to do find action. Find action. Find action, Command-Shift-A, is another one that I do all the time. It's the second most important thing for me after search everywhere. Find action means I don't have to memorize keystrokes. I'm a man of a certain age. If I learn one thing, I'll have to unlearn another thing. And how do I rerun prettier manually? It's whatever the hell that sequence is, and I'll say it, still no prettier. Why is that? Audience, why is it not running prettier on the package.json file?
It's not in a JS file.
Almost right. I'll say that was right because it's not in the file types that I wanted to run prettier on. So I will add JSON and let's see, there's another one there's another one that's going to come up later. And I'll add it then. So now when I've got this, watch, space, save. Why didn't it save? Why didn't it run prettier? Did I not?
It might be because it's inside a string.
Yes. Okay, I picked the wrong example, didn't I? So I should have done that. Yes. Thank you. Note to self. Okay, then I'm going to commit. I'm at a point where I've done the serve the application, and I'm going to commit. I just finished a series of VCS Git videos, little tip videos that were a lot of fun. Our Git support is great. People actually ask us, you should make a Git IDE, but we bundle it with everything. So I'm going to commit, and I'm going to say serve the application. And you see I've got a commit tool window here that tells me what files have changed. I can double click on package.json, see the diffs. If I didn't want this to go in, I want to do a partial commit, I could uncheck it, and it's not going to be in the commit. Otherwise, I can commit, And I have the option to run some things like analyze code, check to-dos, run tests, reformat code, on commit, whatever. All right, I'm at the end of this segment. I will pause and see if anybody has any tips on this or any questions about what I've shown. Yes?
So if you do shift,
Uh-huh.
is there a way to go from like tab to tab with the keyboard shortcut?
It's tab and shift tab. But if you want to go directly to them, mouse over them and they will tell you what's the keyboard shortcut directly to these. There isn't one for Git. In our upcoming release, there's another one. What's it called? Call it text or something?
Yeah, we have a full text search. I will also add, if you have the database tools window and you have a database connection attached,
Do you have anything you want to add?
it'll also search through your SQL schemas as well.
Do you have
So
anything you want to add?
if you have symbols that match table names or column names, those will also show up in the search. So it really is search everywhere.
Colin's point is the database tool, which is an IDE for SQL we have called DataGrip, which is alien magic to the nth degree. We don't ship it in WebStorm because traditionally our customers haven't done that much back-end stuff, but that is changing. And you can buy a DataGrip license and use it in WebStorm, and we're contemplating bundles for making that more obvious. Colin was pointing out Search Everywhere will also look into SQL stuff, which is insane. The git commit Search Everywhere is insane also.
How did you jump to the Git window directly with the keystroke on?
So the question is, how do you use the keyboard to jump to the commit tool window instead of the mouse? Thank you for asking that, because I'm going to see if a tip Colin gave me at breakfast works. It's Command K. Watch the bottom where Presentation Assistant tells you the keys. So it's Control K on Linux and Windows. But how do you make it go away? Confession time. I've worked at JetBrains for 5,000 years, and I never learned the shortcut. And so I do the stupidest thing possible. I bring up the project tool window and then make it go away. And that makes the commit tool window go away. Colin claims Shift Command K will make it go away.
Note that I think it's just escape, Paul. Or
Wrong.
escape.
I did.
Oh, man. See, I didn't think you put me on the spot. Like
Well, yeah, that's what you get for being helpful. Throw you under the bus.
Command 1 works.
Command 1 replaces it with that,
Yes.
which I usually leave off. But you're right, that's how I get rid of the commit tool window, is temporarily replace it with something else. I need to get an answer to this. Okay, so that is serve the application. We're going to start getting into some better stuff, some coding, and make changes to the application. All right, and we will take a break in about 30 minutes. For the record, raise your hand if you're keeping up with me as I go along. Okay, so I will keep doing that. Pick you. Yeah, pick you.
No, I have an answer. It's Shift Escape.
Okay, so I'm here. You're saying Shift Escape
Yes.
on Mac OS.
Yes.
Shift. Dude. Thanks. Shift Escape.
Arrow thing for each window on that side?
Yeah, I think so.
It's the minimized keystroke. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Let's see if it has a presentation assistant pop up for it. I'm going to watch at the bottom. Hide active tool window. Okay, so it will work for any window. Okay.
I just tried it with the project window. It works for that.
All right, so for before on problems, so Shift Escape. All right, good. That is pretty cool.
But it does it for the directories as well. So like,
So, okay, so this,
yeah.
and then now you're saying Shift Escape will make that.
Yeah.
All right, good. All right. Okay, we're going to get into some coding. We're going to make a change to the application, starting with the app component. We're going to put in a title and get it to display. Before, Collie was talking about if you have the database tool, we'll search in there for full text, but also for symbols and stuff. Symbols! If there's one thing I want you to walk out of here thinking about is don't think about files, don't think about strings, think about symbols. Navigate your project by symbol. Pretend there is no file system or file names. So I want to go to the app component and I want to make a change. I could come over to the project tool window, spelunk around until I find that component. Or I could navigate by symbol. On Mac, Command-Alt-O. It shows you at the bottom for Windows and Linux. And I'm going to type APCO. I didn't even have to put the CO part. And it's going to jump to the to the definition of that symbol in that file, which for me is a lot better than moving around file systems and memorizing where everything is. And in the tutorial, they want us to change this to Tour of Heroes. Watch what I'm going to do here. All right? Save, and it puts the colon on. So if I was typing this from the beginning, I'm like, tour of, I wonder if Prettier will finish this for me. Yes, it will. So sometimes instead of doing cleanups, just save and let the great community tooling like Prettier do the work for us. Now, when I do that, I want to then use it in the template. How am I going to get to the template? I could do it the wrong way. I could do it the wrong way, activate the navigation bar and go up. I could do it the right way and treat this as a symbol that we understand that string in an Angular component points to a file name, and I'm going to walk up to it and I'm going to command click on it. I don't want to even put the cursor on it. Hover, command click, and it opens that file. If you don't want to do the command click, you can click on it and then command B and navigate to it. But either way, you see down at the bottom, navigate to declaration. It's treating that file name as a symbol, a declaration, we're navigating to it. What they want us to do is replace it with an H1. Is that right? Yep, an H1. I'm going to use something called Emmet, E-M-M-E-T, which is a shorthand system for generating HTML markup. In this case, it's a simple one, H1 tab, and it completes the stuff for me. And I want title. Look at that, I get autocomplete from the class definition. So I will choose enter. When I save, I'm already formatted correctly, but if I saved it, oh no, sorry. Yes, that was part of the, read your script, Paul. I get here, I'm like, that doesn't look formatted correctly. Let me save. Wait, Prettier didn't run. Why didn't Prettier run? Because I needed to put HTML in here. So now, when I let autocomplete work and hit save, I get the Prettier formatted rendition of this template. So I added that. If I were to go to this in the browser, I'll bring up the run config window, and I'll go click on the file name. Here. I see that I've got that. And that's great, but what about the tests? So I'm going to run my tests, and I'm going to run them by bringing up the run window. I'm going to start typing tests. And when I run the test this time, the tests are going to, what's the word I'm looking for? Fail. Now, why did the tests fail? Oh, this is the magic of using our IDEs. From this point forward, we're going to do a lot of test first and never look at the browser again. I don't want to have to go over here on every change. I can put them side by side on the window, on my screen, but still, it's a bit of a distraction. I can walk up to this and double click and open the test and see, sure enough, this doesn't even exist anymore. Okay, so I will save that.
You want H1, right?
Oh, H1, thank you. And I'm going to rerun the tests. And now it's going to tell me down here that the assertion is incorrect. One thing I could do is just hide this and mouse over the failure, and it will tell me the problem. And that's pretty cool. So I'll change this to Tour of Heroes. And I'll change this one. Is also failing. Both of them have red for their gutter icon, saying that that test failed. That test succeeded. That test failed. How did it fail? I'm going to go find the red squiggle, mouse over it. Oh, yeah. Okay. So Tour of Heroes. And when I rerun my tests, the test passed. Now, it's a little bit distracting for me having this all the time popping up. And maybe I have to go look at it, maybe I don't. I would prefer to run Karma headless. So I'm going to go to the Karma server, close it down, close this. And I'm going to navigate to the ng-conf file and change this to Chrome headless. Now, and you see when I saved, it reformatted the file because of prettier. Now when I run my tests, they ran a little faster and they didn't, I want you to quit. All right, cool. All right, and if I run it again, I won't get Chrome running. That's pretty cool. What is one louder? What's even cooler than this? What if my tests were always running? Well, first I'd want to switch to Jest because Karma isn't exactly fast, and then I'd really want to switch to VTest because that's even faster. But I can walk up to this and I can turn on this, toggle auto test. When I do that, I have a setting I can do. I'll show it in a second. Now, if I rerun, it's now in auto test mode, and it's watching for me to make changes. Auto ran the test. Watch, I'm not even saving because our IDEs have this kind of virtual thingy where they pretend to save for you automatically. Now that was a little bit of a delay. Could I make it any faster? It's in the, here, yes. It's because I've got a big font. I can go to this tool window, and in the test run config, there's an option for setting the delay. I set it to 1 second, and now they run fast. The way I actually do development is something like I split my windows, and I have maybe my template over here, and I fix a test, and it runs, and I don't even have the test window open. I just see this little thing down here telling me my test passed. And if a test fails, I can see the squiggly right here and then go mouse over it. I don't have to have the test window open to see what the problem was. Okay, yes?
Yeah, I mean, this is a relatively simple application,
Mm-hmm.
but on a bigger application, would this sort of cause performance issues or memory issues? Because it's running these tests
Sure.
as you're trying to work, and sometimes on my
Yeah.
laptop, it'll just freeze for a second, which is
Sure.
annoying.
So the question was, this mode of always be testing, auto test with a low delay so that it's rerunning your test runner constantly. In Karma, that's a drag. So if you're using Karma, a solution for that is to just run one test and maybe put it into auto run mode, or run all the tests in this file. Or switch to a saner test runner like Jest, which has JS DOM, or even better, Happy DOM, so that it doesn't have as much overhead, or even better, in some mythical future where vtest is Angular's choice, it only runs the tests for things that changed. It has a dependency tracking mechanism. It knows this test uses these three files. This test doesn't use this file. When I change that file, only run the first test. Any other points on testing and running tests, or any questions on this? This really is my mode of development, is I don't go over to the browser. And we're going to do a lot of this as we continue through the rest of this workshop.
Can you repeat again when you make the faster?
Sure. It's a little bit hidden because of my fonts, my IDE font, but if you go to here and get to that one, you're configuring, this is configuring the options for the whole window, and it's independent of what kind of run tool it is. This is a test run configuration. So it's got things unique to testing, in this case unique to Karma, and I'm going to go and get all of those options, and this is the one that I changed. I'll set it to 2 to be a little more civilized.
Well, that apply only to Karma, right?
It only applies to Karma. For Jest, we don't currently have it wired up because we think you want to put -- watch and let Jest do the watching instead of us do the watching.
Oh, okay.
And so for Jest, what you would do is, let's say I wanted to add a Jest run configuration. You see how we have the placeholder text tells you you can put -- watch here, and it will go into watch mode. We might be changing it in this release. We're definitely doing it for vtest, where you can walk up to an individual test and still have a button that says go into server mode. We might do that for Jest as well. Sure. Any other questions or points? Okay, we just did make changes to the application. Our tests, let me make it pass again. And that didn't run because that wasn't the one that's in auto run. So now when I run the test, my test pass, and I can do make changes and commit. Didn't have any problems with it. Shift escape. And we're in a good spot. Coming back to here, the next thing we're going to do is just some housekeeping about styles, but we'll see some cool things along the way. The first thing they want us to do is to edit styles.css at the top. I will copy this if you're following along. I want to get to styles.css, but I close my project window. I don't like to use the mouse. So start typing. The first match was the best one. As an aside, we do have machine learning inside our products. And over the last 1.5 to 2 years, we've done a lot of work on trying to make the top hit the best across all of our products. It's harder than you think sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to enter that, and I'm going to paste in all the styles. When I save, my CLI server is still running, so I can go back to the browser and see I have some styling. But what I'd like to point out is, let's see, Heroes isn't in this one. I'll have to save it until we do component styles. Tests still pass, because I've got it on auto run. None of the changes affected that. Styling, And so we've made some progress. The next section is a little bit longer and more involved. Did you have a point you want to? How about we go through it and then take the break? Because this is a fun section. Or do you want to break now? You're in the front row. You want to break now, or you want to go through this section?
Let's break now.
All right, let's take a 5-7 minute break. And I'll come see that about the services window. Pace, too slow? All right. It's a little bit tough because if people are following along, they need time to type, but others who are just watching might want to speed up. So if you feel like I'm going too slow on this, let me know. We are going to resume, and we're going to resume, let's see, we finished all of this, and so we're now going to go to the hero editor. We'll start in create the heroes component. And we're going to start with something cool. We're going to switch to the new UI. 2 releases ago, we started making this a little bit available. And it's going to be first class in this release. And then sometime in the future, it may or may not obsolete the old one. So you can switch between old new UI and new UI. But for now, what we're going to do is I will unsplit these. I'm going to turn on the new UI by going to Appearance and Behavior, New UI, and enabling it. When I do, it's going to want me to restart the IDE, so I'm going to explain one thing before I do. You can also do this compact mode where all the icons and some of the padding and spacing get squeezed together. I'm not going to do it because this is a presentation. When I do it, and WebStorm restarts, it looks really different. I'm even going to make it look even more different. I'm going to go to dark. Raise your hand if you use a dark theme. Raise your hand if you use a light theme. So the audience has spoken. Dark mode it is. And I'm going to, I'll close a bunch of these things. All right. And I'm going to create the new component that they want this command run, but I'm going to do it from the IDE. It wants me to create a component called heroes. So instead of going, I don't want to stop my flow, go to a terminal window, type this command, go back to what I was doing. Instead, I might want to just say new, and you see these 2 Angular things. Only appears in an Angular project. And I'll speed type instead of use my mouse. I'll say schematic. And then I'll hit enter. And it will go ask Angular CLI for the list of schematics. This is populated not by us, by Angular CLI. And if I type component, speed type, it filters list. This is a common pattern in our IDEs. When presented with a long list of things, just start typing. It actually has a little special language with slashes and fragments and stuff. And now I can create an Angular component such as heroes. But I can also do parameters. I don't remember what those parameters are. -- flat, is that one of them? So this is a tip from Chow, who was here earlier. I didn't know. Control space gives me the list of arguments, which is also speed typable. So this lets me create a component within the IDE. I say OK. It runs the stuff. Is that going to be too big of a font for the IDE font since I switched themes? If it's taking up too much space down here, let me know. Actually, I'm going to do it. All right. I've generated the component. How do I know the component is there? Let's go ask VCS. I'll bring up the commit window and see what's changed since my last commit. Oh, that's what it did. What's this unversioned files thing? That's what was just created. Here you see where Angular edited the app module to put that new component, but here are the files that weren't created. The IDE is saying, hey, we noticed something, would you like us to help? I can say, yes, help and don't ask me again. Or I can say view files and add. And now all my components are there. So now that I've added to VCS, I want to go make the heroes test fail before I start implementing the work that's about that. Basically test-driven development. I'm going to go write the thing that they want me to implement, which is showing H2 hero. And I'm going to do it, again, by using symbols. I'm going to search everywhere for H. Ultimately, I want heroes.component.spec.ts. It's going to speed type h.spec.ts. There it is. Jump to it. This is the test file. If I were to run the test runner, it would show, let me unzoom a little bit. Is that too small? It now shows that I have not just app component tests, but I have hero component tests, and they're currently passing. Great, let's make them fail. If I were to go in here, and let's see. And say to be falsy, and my test after 2 seconds reran and it said that it failed. And I can mouse over and see it expected it to be false. It wasn't. I'll put it back the way it was. I don't save. 2 seconds later, test run, and I'm good again. I'm going to start doing the implementation of the component. So I want to go to the component that this test is for. It's the heroes component. I could remember that and go to the file system, barbaric. I could activate the navigation bar and get to it by that, but I don't like to think about files. I could navigate by symbol. This is what we were showing before. Symbol, symbol, symbols, yay, symbols. And I could type HECO and jump directly to the heroes component. In this case, I could also, it's right there in my code for my tests. So I just walk up to it, command click on it, there it is. I suspect this is for most modern tooling, but if I leave that out, we get red squiggly saying, hey, you didn't implement the interface correctly. I'd like you to implement it correctly. Okay, there, I implemented it correctly. You happy now? All right. Oh, and because it's throwing the error. And when I save, prettier runs. And then my tests run and it passes again. Let's do the work they asked for in the write-up. I'm going to add a hero property. And so here, new line, hero equal when storm. Now you can already see my hands are trained to use double quotes. So when I save, prettier steps in, changes it, and puts the semicolon on it. Great, I've got that. Prettier added the semicolon. Now, let's go make this failing test. Command E, recent files, so I can jump back to the thing I was just on. Let's face it, a big chunk of our work is just going back and forth between two files. The component, the template, the component, the CSS, the component, the test. And so Command E, enter, without even thinking, is one that you will do a lot. I want to make a failing test for that change that I just made. At the moment, the test only says, does this component exist? So I'm going to go back to my app component. And I'm going to copy this entire test and modify, because that's a lot to type. Here's a way to copy a block. Alt up, extends the selection. Alt up extends, extends, extends until you get to the block you want. I got the it, but not the semicolon, so I'll get that. Command E, enter, goes back to where I was. And now when I put this in, I wait a second. And my test runs, why did it pass? Because I got the app component. Now, it's going to fail. Also, it's going to say, it's going to have a soft warning that you did an import because of the paste. You did an import. You don't need that anymore. Now, life is too short to manage your imports yourself. The IDE can do it for you. It can do it for you according to your preferences, like list these before this, combine these in this way, split lines, whatever. I'm down here. I don't even want to go up there and look at it. My hands are wired to do optimize imports from where I am, and that import got fixed. So that's cool, and my test is failing as I expected. Why is it failing as I expected? Let me go to the template. Oh. Here's the template. Navigate to it. It's a P that says heroes work. I'm going to do test-driven development, and I'm going to have an H2 with hero. And I'm going to predict what that needs to be really is, back to my test. What it really needs to be is, that's not my test. That's not my test. It's an H2 that's going to say windstorm. That fails because I haven't implemented the template. H.H jumps to the template. I'm going to change this to H2 using Everitt, tab, hero, autocomplete because I just added this to my class, hit enter, save, Prettier does its work, and then my tests pass. I just implemented what Tour of Heroes wanted me to do without looking at a browser. I find this to be a much better flow, especially when you run your tests under the debugger. All right. In fact, as I was mentioning a little bit earlier, I actually hide this. And I split my window right. I've got my test over here. Oh, no. Here. It's because I got, tabs. Okay. When I'm in this layout and I'm looking at it and I've got my code on the left and I got my test on the right and sometimes I have my test runner at the bottom, it signals my brain that I'm in happy mode. I'm working under control. I'm not just console.log, switching to my browser and going into the inspector to look at, this, that, or the other thing, constantly back and forth between Chrome DevTools and my IDE. I'm in happy mode, and if I make a mistake, I'll get a little warning telling me my test failed. Over here, a transient little pop-up that will go away, and I can see over here, the gutter icon tells me my test failed. And then I go and I get it working again. I don't even have to save. 2 seconds later, my test passed. So for me, that's a much better way to stay in the flow, etc. And something I pointed out before, if I make it fail, I don't have to go to the test window to see the failure. This, I can hover over it, hover over the assertion squiggly, and see the problem. Okay, onward. I will go ahead and commit. I'll say create heroes component. I also get autocomplete in here, which is kind of cool. And we will go on to the next section. So we're going to show the heroes component view. I'm going to do some, let me see, where am I going to do this? Unclutter. Yes, that's next. I'm going to show a little bit of zooming the IDE. I can go to zoom and make it smaller. I can make it bigger. And this controls kind of the Chrome as well as the editor size. Now, I want to do what they're asking me in the tutorial. I want to make this change. So I want to get to the component HTML in the app component. Well, I'm currently in the heroes component. What's the best way to get there? I can shift and do app.component.h and get to it. If I don't want to think about files, I could navigate to symbol for the app component and then click on command click on its file and its template and jump straight to the file. That's a hand up.
Oh, no.
That's a hand up.
Yeah. So say you're using like NX in a mono repo and you're trying to find a file, but there's multiple files named the same thing. What's a way we can, because I've tried to do that
Sure.
before and had problems. I'm like, I know it's in this application, but when I try to use the folder name, it doesn't seem to work very good when I do shift.
So the question is, if you're in a mono repo, it has trouble finding similarly named files. And the traditional answer would be you do something like, and put part of the path in there. But what you're saying is the mono repo indirection might be breaking that. And if so, come see us. And if we can't answer the question, we'll blame it on NX and you'll go see them.
They're here too, right?
They're here too. And they will say, go see WebStorm. Okay, I have gotten to the template and I need to do this work. So an H1 with the title and then the app heroes. So I'm going to do an H1 with the title, which I already had. It can autocomplete on that. New line, and then heroes. So I get the autocomplete of the symbols. Yay, but you're probably already used to that. What are some of the cool things that it does? Well, it's giving me a squiggly. No, it wasn't giving, it's just because it's selected. I can navigate to that definition. When I'm sitting on that definition, I can find all the usages of that selector. And we see it's only used in one place, and I can double click to go to it. But I can do more. I can refactor, rename, and spell it wrong. Now, if I go back and look at the definition, I see the definition, even with a little helpful, you spelled it wrong, and the usages, sees it back to the template. Point is, I can refactor, rename from either the declaration or the usage, including Angular semantics like these magic strings. And then if I'm like, dude, that is a typo, that was a mistake, undo, puts everything in that editor transaction back the way it was. So that's one of those Angular specific things. We treat these magic strings like symbols that you can rename just like you can rename your classes and stuff. Even classes, we have special support. If you rename the class, we say, hey, Angular wants the file name to match your class name. Do you want us to rename the file? You say, yes, rename the file, and it'll go fix all the imports. Okay. Let's see if we are still running correctly. I'll go to the, I'll not use the keyboard on this. Bring up with Control-Alt-R all of my run configurations and run the CLI server. I want to run it without down, down, down. So it's bring up run control, CLI, enter, and it runs. Back to my browser. and I see Windstorm. Again, I don't like switching over to the browser a lot, so what I'm happier about is that all my tests ran and passed. Kind of weird that it groups it under. Oh, because I've got a conf file. All right. The tests run okay, but if I go to the Karma server, okay, the app ran great in the browser. Hey, ship it, right? We were talking before about build servers and shipping things. Sometimes things don't work in production. So it works great there. The tests seem to pass, but there was actually something wrong with my application. It's telling me that app heroes is defined. We put it in the correct place in the app module setup and stuff like that, but in the component, we need it in the component declaration for the app component tests. I believe that's the one. Here. Let it do the import for me, save, and now if I go to the Karma server, it no longer complains about that missing import. So that's just a Karma thing. I guess that will still, that's testbed, not Karma, right? So it'll still be a thing in Jest. Maybe this is something where we know to add the import on the module side, but for tests, we should go find any test that should be importing it and add it for you. Maybe that's something we could help on. Am I wrong about that? Do you think the IDE could figure that out?
Some people don't like to list every component because it really slows down the test, and sometimes people are using the test bed, but they're not really asserting on the HTML of child components. So there's not a universal opinion on it.
Matthew's point is sometimes you want it, sometimes you don't, and just doing it automatically would piss people off. It's not quite what Matthew said, but
either way, you're going to make one half of the people
okay.
happy. The other thing people do, of course, is they put custom element schema, which isn't really the right thing, or just ignore errors, which also is not quite the right thing for another reason.
All right. Okay, so my tests are running fine now. I will commit, and this is the show view. And we're good. We will go on to the next part now. Create a hero interface. Again, this is getting into the places where the IDE can help on automation for you and telling you if you're right or wrong once you start getting into TypeScript. So I need to create a source app hero.ts file. I'm going to use activate navigation bar and say new file, heroes.ts. Yes, please add it to VCS for me. Thank you, IDE. And I'm going to say export interface. Look, it completed it for me. I think this is based on the file name. It kind of guessed, hey, you're in heroes.ts. And its ID is a number, I think. Name is a string. Did I get that string? I did. All right, cool. So I've got the interface now. I need to go back and use it. Just for fun, I will open the problems view. Nothing wrong in my project so far. I'm going to go back to Heroes component. I'm going to navigate by symbol. And what it wants me to do is to make my hero be this. So I'm going to do a little speed typing on this. I'll say, delete that line and say heroes. Did I mess that up? Was that supposed to be hero?
It's supposed to be singular.
Singular. Okay, let's see what happens when I go back to that file. All right, I want to name this hero. And I want to refactor, rename this file. No, the file. Yep. Okay, we're all good. Thank you for catching that. And so I'm back in my component, hero. So it saw that I've got it. I hit enter. It generates the import for me. It starts yelling at me because I don't obey the interface. I'll get the autocomplete, and they wanted this to be ID1, name WebStorm. This was Prettier running and moving my cursor for me. Thank you, Prettier. And name. Okay, so good. Now, I saved, and notice my tests failed. I will go back to my tests and see which one failed. It's that one. Why did it fail? Well, pretty obviously, it's an object now, not a value. That's probably what messed up. So good-ish. But I didn't have to go to the browser to find out that I failed. I stayed in the flow. So next up, I need to show that, which is a trip over to the template. And it's going to look a little bit like this. I'm going to try to memorize this and show something. So back in the template, I've already forgotten. Okay, this will be hero.name and then details. And what I want to generate here is a div with a span. So I'm going to do div span with Everitt, the shorthand system, and hit, let me see, this has no class on it yet. Hit tab, ID colon, and then I want to say hero.id. I'm going to duplicate that line and say name. And when I run this, my test will pass because all I was looking for was the H2 to contain WebStorm. H2 to contain WebStorm. I could write some tests that assert all of this stuff if I wanted to. So I'm in good shape on this. I've got all the navigation you would expect. Like if I mouse over hero, it tells me where it's defined, and I can navigate to it. If I mouse over name, it tells me what it is, but watch. See, it says that this comes from the interface. Now I'm going to navigate to the interface, not the implementation.
Yeah, and IntelliJ and WebStorm may already do this. But is there any chance we could get a utility that you could drop in a JSON object and it generate the interface for you?
Huh. Colin, we walked in at a perfect time. The question is, any way to be staring at some JSON and infer a TypeScript type or interface?
I mean, I know there's web pages that'll do it for you, but it'd be nice if that was just a feature right in the IDE.
So in Rider, JetBrains Rider, we do have that specifically for C#, but I'll go back to Andre, who's our WebStorm team lead, and kind of mention that as a feature, but that is something that's in other IDEs for other specific languages, but for TypeScript classes, I'm not 100% sure, but I'll ask him, and if not, I'll put an issue in.
Yeah,
Or see if there is one already, yeah.
And we're not using, they got rid of the WebStorm license for us and just gave us IntelliJ. So,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
We've got so many jobs.
It should be the same, yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
it should be the same.
WebStorm powers the IntelliJ web experience, so when we say WebStorm, we're actually
Talk about
We're
IntelliJ.
In PyCharm or whatever, yeah. Yeah, this is a cool thing. We have the Emperor God King of WebStorm in the booth, Andre, and he's exceptionally smart on all things TypeScript and all things for our IDEs. So if you have some great idea about Angular development, you think, wow, this would blow people's minds, go see him. If you have a deep complaint about something that's wrong, go see him. If you have some praise for the product, see us. Okay, so I've made that change to add the symbol and the templating for it to show it. One thing I forgot to show is the way I work, which is I hide my clutter. I don't use tabs. What's the fastest way to use tabs? There's actually find action. Find action is great for things like navigate to blah, 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 or whatever. It can also find settings. So when I want to turn tabs on and off, I say TAPLN, TLP, yeah, tab, oh, that's the wrong one. TAPL none. And I can actually change it without going to settings by hitting enter to toggle it. Enter to toggle it, enter to toggle it. So that's great. I now don't use tabs because you get tab explosion, and it's just like moving in files. Where did I put that tab? Instead, I just find other ways to organize my workspace, really lean, and navigate. I don't show a bunch of things at once. I also turn off the toolbar windows, and I turn off the navigation bar. So I have a pretty lean experience. Sometimes I turn off the status bar down at the bottom as well. So this is the way my IDE looks. And for me, it kind of centers me on using the mouse, the keyboard instead of the mouse. Raise your hand. Okay, go ahead.
Speaking of using the mouse, is there a way to do the commits and pushes without using the mouse? As far as I can tell, you can only hit the commit button like with the mouse.
Sure. Command K brings up the commit tool window, and it puts your cursor in the message, and if you hit Alt Enter, it will do commit. Or sorry, Command Enter. If you want to get rid of this, we just learned earlier, Shift Escape gets rid of the active tool window. Were you the one that gave us that? Who gave us the Shift Enter?
I think somebody over here did.
Okay.
We just talked about all the places where it works.
Well, place, yeah, right. Okay, so we're in this. We can do all the kinds of navigation. We can do refactor renames and stuff like that. For example, I might want to rename this to Hero, spelled incorrectly. And here are my options for where I want to find usages. I do the refactoring for it, and now when I jump to it, I see that the value on the class was renamed. And again, I can undo that entire transaction and put everything everywhere back the way it was before. Check my tests, just for fun. Tests still pass. I'm good. I can commit. I'm showing the hero object. Okay, that covers a good bit in the tutorial up to show the hero object. I will pause here for a second. Anybody need time to catch up? You caught up? Are you still following along?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Was there any parts to that that looked interesting and you'd like me to explore? Reduce clutter or the navigation stuff, the use of symbols? Anybody have any tips for how they work that's already a WebStorm user, tips about how you work with Angular you want to share? Or anything else? The services tip before was pretty interesting. Okay, we will go on then to format with the uppercase pipe. Yeah, sure.
Just one tip I have.
Yeah.
Is, with all the keyboard shortcuts and all that, you can also like customize all those. And so
Good point.
Like, I set up one to like more easily switch branches, like bring up the Git branches menu. I could just really easily either type new branch or switch to master or switch to whatever.
That's what I should use because that frustrates me as well.
Yeah,
It's a multi-step, yeah.
C for checking.
Yeah. Before finishing on that, in new UI, the new widget we have for the branch menu is so much nicer. Before, part of it was split at the top and then in the bottom in the status bar window. And this one I really like. It's got search. It can do remotes as well. It condenses and collapses to only show you the most recent branches instead of all, and it scrolls off the window. Yeah.
So something I've noticed while working on WebStorm is that sometimes I'll do the command click into a file.
Like
And-
here?
Yeah, like if you command click there,
Mm-hmm.
it'll open up a new tab, but the tab title is italicized. And if you click into another file from there, it'll replace that italicized tab.
Is that sort of like what VS Code does? It like doesn't keep your tab unless you start like typing.
Yeah, I was wondering
Yeah.
if that's an option.
That is the answer. I believe you have the setting for enable preview tab.
And that's by project?
That might be the answer. If that's not the answer, I'm an idiot. Go see Andre. We'll get a diagnosis of it.
Wait, where'd you pull this?
So in the project tool window, are you new UI?
Yeah,
All right, so the 3 vertical dots are the options, and then it's enable preview tab or open files with a single click.
okay, and is that global or is that
Yeah.
per project?
No, it's per project.
Okay. All right, cool.
If that doesn't fix it, let's go see Dad.
Father's Day is coming up.
Yes, and what would Father want more than a bug report? We're almost out of bugs in the WebStorm issue tracker. That's not true at all. Okay, let's do the format with an uppercase pipe. And so what they want us to do is this. So let's talk a little bit about how the IDE can help on this. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say up, and it knows from here what to complete. I believe it will complete on custom filters and directives and things as well. And if I mouse over it, I can get more info about what it is. And I could even navigate to the definition of it, which really clears things up because Greek symbol pipe, everyone knows what that is, right? Double Greek symbol pipe. What's that, theta?
Yes.
All right. I'm sure that this is some interface that I should understand and don't, but go back to where we were. So that's kind of a nice thing. Now, as soon as I do that and save, I see that I've got a failure in my tests. Makes sense because it doesn't contain windstorm anymore. It contains
Should we rename this to WebStorm?
that would be a fun riff on the Tour of Heroes. Well, who's the number 1 hero? WebStorm. Okay, so I've got the uppercase pipe working. I can navigate to it, see things, fix tests, and commit. Uppercase. Moving along in the tutorial. I want to edit the hero. So I'm going to do something for a second. I'm going to stop the test runner here. And I'll stop all. Yeah. Let's see a second. But you are still running. I'll go to the Karma server, stop it, stop it. And what I want to do is I want to add a line in the heroes component spec. I think I'll type this out a little bit. Now I'll copy this line. And I want to do query selector all. And I want to do the input that we're about to do. So this is like test-driven development. I'm going to write a test that fails. And I want its outer HTML because testing this without, right, in the wrong spot on this. Let's see. Oh, I don't want all on this one. This is one that's just going to have the same one. Yay, TypeScript for helping. To contain windstorm. So I'm going to write a test that fails before implementing the fix for this. And the reason I stopped it is I want to show that it's really super simple to walk up to one test and run it. So I'm going to run just this one test. I do this a lot when I've got my whole big test runner, and I know I'm in the middle of breaking things. I don't want a lot of breakage at once. I just want to look at one thing and keep looking at it until I make this test pass. So I see what the failure is on this. And what I want to do is going to require the use of the forms module. So let's go ahead and start implementing the two-way binding. I'm going to go to here. And this detail is going to change. I'm going to try and type this correctly. So div label.
This is the copy button again.
I'll actually copy and paste. And then now I'm going to type this one. Oop, thank you, Prettier. Input. And I'm going to say an ID equal to, and see it auto-completes on all the labels definitions in here. So I'm going to choose name. And then I want the two-way binding. So this is going to be now, when I auto-complete on this, it's going to do something cool for me. It's going to ask me if I want the import. And it will go and put this in the correct place, which the Tour of Heroes tutorial has a whole section on go clean up the mess you just made with the missing import. So thank you, it did that for me. And the rest of this is here. I'll copy and paste the rest of it. All right, so great. Let me save this and rerun that test. And as expected, it failed because ng-model got added in the correct place in app module. WebStorm generated this for me, but it didn't put it in my test. So what I need in my test is import, right?
Yeah.
So I get the autocomplete, and I get forms module. When I save it and run, test passes, no complaints. So that's a little bit of a case where we get some autocomplete, we get some fixing of some code with the forms module import because we know that ng-model is a popular thing to do, but we still had a little bit of something we had to do in our test. I'll go back, I'll close this one and run all of my tests now. And my tests all pass, which means I have done the two-way binding and the form module and the app module and the imports all correct. And I can commit. All right, next up, the app module. We want to get to the right spot, app module. Angular needs to know how things fit together, so we need to import the forms module. We did that part. I'd like to confirm that we did that part, so I'm going to navigate to the app component. In the things that it's talking about, import the forms module. Did we import the form? Oh, now I need the app module. Did we import it? Yep, we did. Here. Did we add it to our imports? Yes. So we did these things. And this is all places that WebStorm did it for you because we can detect, I'm in an Angular template. When you autocomplete ng-model, go fix up the app module for me. All right, I will pause there real quick before going on to the next part, which is display a list. Any questions or points? I will give you some homework as we're going along on this and you think about your own personal developer experience with Angular and you think, hey, if I was the Emperor God King of a really important professional IDE, what would I add to WebStorm that would really make a difference in people's development? I've got a bunch of ideas. The Angular team gave us a bunch of ideas for what could be done for WebStorm, but you matter more, so if you have any ideas, let us know. All right, we are in display selection list, and I need to create some mock heroes. I will do this, I'll do part of this typing myself. So mock heroes, I'm going to go to here, say mock heroes.ts. For following along, yes, I want to add it to Git. And the first thing I'm going to do is not import. I'm going to say export const heroes, and then autocomplete, and it generates the import for me, and that's a list. Okay, and then when I save, Prettier is going to clean up for me. I'll go ahead and paste all these in and then show what this looks like in problems view, save, fixes it for me. I obviously get autocomplete. And then I'm going to make a mistake and get the red squiggly. And Alt-Enter is going to show me that I could suppress it. But also this problems view, no matter where I am in the project, it's Alt-6 to go to problems view. No matter where I am in the project, it would let me know that there was a problem over there. So for example, I'll jump to this and fix the problem. Now that's not a common case. What is a common case, I'm going to go to the heroes interface and I'm going to I'm going to give it the French name. Suddenly, I've got a lot of problems. And I can see all of these places and then very quickly jump to them and fix them. I find the problems view to be quite helpful when working with TypeScript, undo, save, and that's fixed. I didn't give the TypeScript service long enough to update itself on that. All right, so I've created the mock heroes, put it in environment, shows you the problems view. And now we need to get into displaying them. So here we're talking about displaying the heroes. I need to go to the heroes component and make that change. As you would imagine, I can navigate by symbol. As soon as I do this, my tests are going to start having problems. Now this is not, this was, first I'll get rid of that. This was something that was happening to me yesterday, that it wasn't able to do this import.
Assignment would work better than a column.
Oh, yeah. When I did it on the flight and made the mistake, it was the stupidest mistake ever. Oh, yes, that's the stupidest mistake ever. It's equals. God, I did it again. Let me go back to the top and do this the right way. So heroes equal heroes. Generate the import for me. Thank you. When I save, I get the Prettier running. And now when I navigate to the template, it's time for some problems. And in fact, if I go to the test run, actually my test still passed because I wasn't iterating over anything. I'm only looking at the stuff. So when I go to the template, I've got the problem with my hero.name. That makes sense because we're not looking at an individual hero now. I want this. I'll speed things up a little bit by cutting and pasting and saving. This is telling me, hey, you don't have a hero defined yet because I haven't done ng-for. Let hero of heroes. When I mouse over this, it tells me where the definition is. I can navigate to it, go back. When I mouse over this, navigate to the definition, it's at the left. When I save, I don't get a test failure because I didn't have enough test coverage on this template to have a problem. It's just looking for a span or something. All right, so I've done the LI. Now the styling, I'll skip the styling. I'm going to show a little bit about refactor in imports. So for example, you see we have this problem here. And I can optimize imports, and it goes away. What if I didn't do that import? I can walk up to here and generate the import. What if I didn't have any of my imports, and I have a lot of problems? With this, I can correct all of them with Option, Shift, Enter, and it just magically generates all my imports for me. Now, we saw that we didn't have a test that was good, so I'm going to navigate to the test. And I'm going to add in to this test. I'll copy, and this is the one that has all. And I'm going to say for li, and I want to say length to equal. And the way I write tests is I put in some obviously wrong value.
I'm going to give you the right value.
Let it fail, right? And I think that I'm not in auto run anymore when I switched to new UI. And so it will tell me, like you said, the correct value. Oh, because something else failed. So this is supposed to be my heroes now, is that right? And then this, I'll get rid of this. And now it's telling me it's actually 9. And my test passed, so I can commit. So several things in this section. Let the IDE do your janitorial work for you through optimized imports. Some cool tips for optimized imports to get all of your imports imported at once with Option Shift Enter. One thing I didn't show was the renaming of selectors, which I showed previously. And then when you're writing tests, all these tricks to make us more productive in tests without having to jump over to something, just show the value. You got the selector on the correct element. You have a pretty good idea that it's got the right answer. Let the IDE tell you on hover. On to style heroes. Let's see. We just did the styling. So yeah, I'll go ahead and do this. I'm going to navigate to the heroes component. And I think we'll wrap up after this one. I'm going to go to the CSS for it. And I'm going to paste in the styling that they wanted from the final code review. This is one that I wanted to show. So you see we've got some custom CSS selectors like this. I can find usages. And I can see that it's in this CSS, but it's in this template. From the template, I can navigate to the definition in the CSS. Either from the definition or here, I can refactor rename without the E. And now when I find all the, when I go to the find usages, I see that it renamed everything in the CSS file, and I can undo. So that's a pretty cool thing about our IDEs is from a language service perspective, we can handle more than one language at a time, things that are mixed into the same file, and give a lot of refactoring and rename opportunities. I really need to use that CSS integration a lot more because it's really cool. All right. What if I made some really big mistake in my CSS, like I did a refactor, rename to heroes, and I didn't know about that undo trick, and I went to the definition, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to recover this? And this was, I haven't committed since the original one. I've got this thing called local history. And it is a way to keep revisions of every editor transaction on a file or even a directory you can recover from a deleted file. So I could walk up to this and say, hey, revert to that one. And now when I go to it, I've got the correct thing. On the other side, it's wrong, so I'll do a fix. Do my tests still pass? I'll run them. They do. And I will style my heroes. Okay, that covers the CSS part. I've got one more section to do. Would you like to do a short break, or would you like to go through that one section? Keep going? All right, cool. Okay, I'm going to do the view details, and then we'll wrap up. I need a click binding that goes to onSelect. So I'm going to go to the template for the hero. I'll do that with search everywhere. h.c.h takes me to the hero's component HTML, which is where I just was. And I'm going to use autocomplete to add this handler so that the button gets click on select hero. So watch how this happens. So I get the autocomplete for that. And when I type on select, it can't finish it because I haven't implemented the handler yet. And I will need to also say hero. One of the things that I get is Alt-Enter, and it's telling me I've got a problem, and it's offering to fix it. Do you have a question?
Yes. It used to be a joke that you couldn't auto-complete things that didn't exist yet, but now with like things like Copilot, you can. Does JetBrains planning to do something similar to that?
Does JetBrains plan to do something similar to LLMs for autocomplete? GitHub Copilot has a extension for our IDEs, so you can use that. And what we plan to do, as you can imagine, we've got plans.
Cool.
In this case, we don't need to do the stub. We can do this kind of thing. And it puts me on top of the class with most of the stuff filled in. Enter, enter. I need to autocomplete that. And then for the handler, I just need to say this. Ooh. But that doesn't exist. So Alt-Enter, create a field for it. Enter. I'll take the private off. Oh, and it needs to be optional. All right, that wraps up the workshop. Do we, I'll take a seat. Any points you would like to add? I know that we went through pretty fast on certain things, but we got to the end. Lots more that we can teach on this. Lots more that my new colleague can teach on this. You had your hand up. Did you have something?
Yeah. We didn't really go into it here, but like a lot of the Git features in IntelliJ I find are really helpful.
Yep.
So like we have these pre-commit hooks and these things that are checking for, like let's say that like there's a particular token all your commit messages have to have in it. Mm-hmm. And so you can make commits without that token in it, but you can't commit anything to our repo. So if you made like 10 commits and your fourth or fifth commit doesn't have that token in it, like going back and trying to manually edit, it's a pain in the neck. But in IntelliJ, you can just go edit right in the commit message.
Yeah.
And it does all that for you. And even we use Jira you can basically create branches locally, and you don't have to remember the upstream commands and all that stuff that you gotta do
Yep.
in order to make a commit upstream on a branch that is not currently on Jira.
Yep.
So, I mean, like because of what you were going through here, like you really couldn't talk about it, but like for me, the Git features are pretty powerful. And they save a lot of command line stuff that I used to do.
So the point about the Git features being really powerful is spot on. They're powerful, they're really mature. They've been working on it for a dedicated team, working on it for a very long time. And so they've kind of started working on the long tail of problems that not a lot of people have, but when you hit it, you're really happy to have IDE help for it. This is the go back in history and edit a commit message. Ways to cherry pick, ways to manage your remotes, partial commits.
There's one other feature that I would like. Sometimes when you got multiple processes running, sometimes I would like to be able to terminate new processes right from my terminal, right from the IDE.
Yeah.
So like if I make a mistake and I don't terminate something and something is running on port 4200, like it'd be nice and intelligent if it had a feature where I could, basically see all my ports that are running.
Sure.
Delete them.
Can you come see us and see if Andre knows of a plugin?
Okay.
Something that might integrate into the services menu or something so you can see things that you depend on listed in a place that you would expect them to appear.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yep.
Well, and regarding to Git, for me it's still not clear. Maybe it's a silly question, but what is the difference between the shelf and
Sure.
and the Git stash? Because for me the Git stash are stashing everything there.
Sure.
So I'm still not finding. I've
Sure.
already watched your video many times.
I was just going to say that about the
It's quite
video.
helpful. It's quite helpful, but for me it's still being more easy just running Git stash and go
Sure.
on. So can you tell me why?
I think the main point is that stash, you can't be selective in what goes into the stash. It's everything or nothing. And with shelf, you can do the equivalent of partial commits and only put some of the things on the shelf and take some of the things off the shelf. I think that's the big difference.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. When I did that video, I got a lot of hate mail in the comments because I stupidly did shelf before stash. One more time, JetBrains reinvent something that everyone else has already done.
Yes, I read those.
Yeah. I think that we did shelf before Git did stash, but sure. Oh, that's another thing is it's a facility that works across VCS systems. I know everyone uses Git now, but there was a time when people cared about Mercurial or something else.
But the other thing is you have to learn not to read the comments. Unless they're not about you. They're
Sure.
hilarious.
Sure, yeah. Some of them are pretty funny. All right, any other tips or any points? If you think of one, it's like you should have said blah, blah. Come to the booth. Tell me, say, Paul, you should have said blah,
I
blah.
have one last one. So
One last one.
when you are rearranging the icons, for
Mhm.
example, from the menu, I love to have the file explorer on the right.
Ah.
Because always I have my thing here, and I don't like to start moving my thing.
Sure,
so
sure.
I prefer to have it there in the right.
Right.
So how can you make that persistent through all the projects? Because when I move to another project,
Yeah.
then I need to do it again.
I don't believe that's possible. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Are the configs saved like with a file?
Yeah, you could use throw version control edit and have the .idea folder for just that settings file. But yeah,
But I think it will be more easy if there is something that
yeah,
because you can enable and make it a persistent, and then when you open them across all the projects, because mostly when you are customizing,
I agree,
IDEs,
I agree.
Because you like it like that, it makes it
Yeah.
comfortable.
Come share that one with us as well. I'll bet you there's a ticket with 1,000 votes for that. Yeah.
I switched to the new UI and I had to switch back because I couldn't find things. But
Who moved my cheese?
yes, my cheese has been moved many times over the last few decades in IDEs, so
Yeah.
I'm willing to do it. But what's the payback for the new UI?
Reduced clutter. We're doing it not because we enjoy getting yelled at. We're doing new UI because over the years, one of the biggest reasons was there's an old joke in the Python community. Python was designed, Perl was accumulated, and our UI was accumulated. Lots of inconsistencies over the decade and a half, 18 years, whatever, that IntelliJ's been around. So it needed some cheese to be moved anyway. And people felt overwhelmed. It's got so much stuff on the screen. And there has been a trend, not just in editors, but in all tools, to be much more minimal. You see that in just about everything. Lean. And so that is a trend that we were asked to take a look at and put a lot of work with focus groups and stuff like that, backed out of decisions that our customers didn't like. But we were doing that because our customers wanted something leaner.
But we should still be able to go through the settings and turn back on
Sure.
the clutter that we were enjoying, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. I'll look for it in the settings.
Yeah.
I think they did the same thing with Microsoft Office as well.
Right.
I used to be a Microsoft trainer, and all the features that they had in like the first versions of Microsoft, now is much, much more pared down for just the things that people use the most and most often. And so those other features, if you really, really know, you can dig and root around in the software to figure it out. But otherwise, 90% of them are features that nobody would ever use.
Yeah.
Like you might have found the reason
Sure.
for it.
Remember when Microsoft Word had more rows of toolbars than editor lines?
Yeah, they had the toolbar ribbon.
And then they
all that
switched to
sort
the
of
ribbon,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, and they had the paperclip thing and all that stuff, and it's just like, and then screens weren't that big back then, but
Sure.
now, you got more screen, less icons, so it's
Mm-hmm.
just sort of like you got more real estate.
But I am completely with you. When I first switched to new UI, I had the same impression. And then I kind of felt like, I know this isn't an answer for you, but I felt like I should be using the keyboard more anyway. And when I made that change in my mind, it didn't bother me as much that my cheese was moved. It would be interesting if you could think of the 3 cheese movings that bug you the most, and if we can fix that before you leave. If we can show you how to bring that back, if we can find if there are any plans to put something back. There was one in the VCS menu that I was bitter about disappearing, which was show diff, actually.
Oh, wow.
And somebody said, you can just double click on the topmost thing and it will show you all of them.
Yeah.
Like,
I noticed that.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Like in your,
I didn't need that button anyway, you're right.
Yeah, in your commit message, when when it lists all the files, you just double click on any file and commit, and
It gets you right back to that thing, yeah, you're right. So let's see if we have an alternative for the annoyances. All right, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Come see us with ideas, please.